Hi, I'm Craig Lounsborough, and I want to welcome you to Life Talk. You know, we're building memorials every day. And whether we realize it or not, or whether we think about it or not, we're very much involved in the business of building memorials. And we're doing it every single day. The memorials that we're building are the ones that will be about our lives. Every choice, every decision, every action, every inaction, every interaction, every conclusion that we draw, every word that we speak, every dollar that we spend, and every commitment that we make or forsake has some small part in the building of a memorial that will speak to the life that we lived. Yet we don't tend to think about that. We assume that our decisions and our actions will obviously have some sort of short-term or possibly long-term repercussion, but we assume that whatever that repercussion is, it will eventually be done or lost to time. We tend to view things as more progression, where we make a choice or take an action that will result in something that will eventually make way for whatever the next thing is that's coming. But we don't stop to consider that everything that we do has a bit of something timeless in it. Everything that we do is slowly, or sometimes not so slowly, etching out a memorial to who we are and what we did. And so it would seem that if we're building our own memorials as we go along, we might want to be a little more judicious and a whole lot more thoughtful about what we're doing. If every action is a part of constructing some sort of memorial, we'd be quite wise to think through those actions. Too often we're foolishly naive or blatantly careless or straight up selfish in the daily things that we do. We slog along or run along or trip along without much thought as to what we're doing in the slogging and the running and the tripping. Too often we're simply ramming ourselves into things or out of things or both. And in far too many situations, we're compromising our morals or spinning the truth or abandoning our values because that stuff just gets in the way of the stuff that we really want. And every time we do that stuff, we're adding yet another facet to the memorial of our lives. And so it's bad enough that we often don't think through the consequences of our choices, over the long term anyway. It's even worse that we don't consider the implications regarding the image that we're casting, or the picture that we're painting, or the rendering that we're sculpting that's gonna be around long beyond the long term. We're just hacking away at things and not thinking a whole lot about what the hacking's gonna look like when we're done hacking. We're about getting ahead because we got behind. We're about reinventing our images because the last reinvented image is sorely outdated. We're about climbing the proverbial ladder because if we don't, the next guy is going to. And we just can't find any room in our egocentric cerebral cortexes to tolerate that. In the process of achieving our goals, we're going to perform a little sleight of hand and do a couple of handoffs. And in the process, hand ourselves all the credit for what we perceived we accomplished. And if what we're doing doesn't work out all that well, we'll hand off the blame to someone else. And every time we do that stuff, we're adding yet another facet to the memorial of our lives. And so we need to think about it. We should stop and think about it. Maybe we should pull up, reassess what we're doing, and ask what kind of memorial we want to leave behind when we're gone. Because we are most certainly going to leave one. Every action is something temporary that gets carved into something permanent. Every decision is yet another etching in a larger sculpture that will forever remain etched in that sculpture. Every time we act with impunity, or abandon our integrity, or choose that which is immoral because it's easier, or decide to cast ethics to the wind, another brushstroke is added to the memorial that we will ultimately leave behind. And when our days have passed and that memorial is completed, there will be no altering it. Memorials, well, they're what they are. As we go along in life, sometimes we begin to realize that the memorials that we're crafting aren't turning out all that well. We look at them, and in the looking, we're not all that excited about having people see them, or having them be the things that memorialize our life's journey once we're gone. Indeed, it may accurately reflect who we've been and what we've done, but it isn't all that flattering, and it's certainly not very pretty. And in looking at whatever this memorial is that we've been vigorously fashioning, we decide that this is not really how we want to be remembered. And so we're going to attempt to modify it. Despite the fact that the memorial that we're creating isn't all that appealing, too often we're not really all that interested in changing what we're doing or how we're living. Sometimes we kind of like what we're doing, even if it's not all that ethical or wholesome or good. Or we're just not all that interested in engaging in all the changing that change will demand of us. But we certainly don't like the way that our actions are carving this memorial of ours. So we attempt to make our memorials look good, even though we know that they're really not all that good at all. But time has an interesting way of eroding lies and distortions. Time is patient in scrubbing away the falsehoods and scouring away the fabrications. Time will ultimately massage away the nip and tuck, and it will rub our memorials clean of any makeovers, despite how meticulously crafted they might have been. In time itself will whittle down any memorial to what the memorial really is. In time will reveal who we really were and the life that we really lived. And that memorial, purged of fraudulence, cleansed of duplicities, and stripped of veneers, will stand throughout time as a reliable testimony to who we really were. And because that's the case, we'd be terribly wise to build our memorials carefully. Simply because every time we do stuff, we add yet another facet to the memorial of our lives. And so, what are you building? You're building something, so you might want to think about what that is, and you might want to think about how you're doing it. Think about this. First, timeless memorials are crafted out of actions that are driven by a strong sense of ethics, morals, and values. Memorials crafted with these principles as an underlying foundation will stand the test of time, regardless of how rigorous that test might be. Second, timeless memorials are built on the actions that we take on the behalf of others, and not to the benefit of ourselves. Memorials turned into self-glorifying monuments are certain to decay, and decay rapidly. If it's all about you and only about you, it is not going to last. Third, whatever we build, we need to build it to enrich those who will follow us. We need to build these memorials from the raw material of consistently timeless values, ruggedly solid truths, and unwaveringly guiding principles that will provide both stirring inspiration and a sure map for generations to come. And fourth, it's really not about building a memorial at all. It's about living out a life of godly integrity and unsulliedly biblical core values, because in living out these things, our memorials will naturally construct themselves quite nicely. So, think about the memorials that you're building, because you're building one, and it's going to be around long, long after you're not. Thanks for joining us today. You'll discover all of my books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever books are sold. It's my hope that you find these books as being meaningful and restorative in your life. Also, visit us daily on all of our social media sites to find inspirational quotes and videos. Thanks for joining us today. See you next time. I wish for an indomitable courage that is spawned by the conviction that without liberty, we are without life. I want to possess a breathless passion, persistently driven by the understanding that unless liberty is running untethered and free, all is slavery. And I want to be so desperately thirsty for these that should I need to die for them in order to possess them, I would gladly do so. It is out of these convictions that great people are raised up and great nations are born.